Hello, my name is Caitlin Preston,
I'm Addie Fountain.
I'm Bailey Galisi.
and we're part of the Missouri State Athletic Training Program. We're here to discuss Extreme Ownership, the book for our leadership class.
We're discussing chapters 4 through 6.
Yes. Okay, so for chapter 4, just to start out, it was Check the Ego. And basically they had while in Iraq, they had two groups or two teams that had already been working together at one camp. And then they wanted to bring in another group or troop that had been doing pretty well. So they tried bringing them in, and one of the leading officers was like, I just don't want to help them. I think I should just leave them on their own because they think they're so good, and I just want to kind of put them there and let them try and figure it out. But then Jocko was like, no, don't do that. Help them out, give them what they need, and then work together. You guys are in the same group. You're trying to accomplish the same thing. So eventually this new group came in and started working together. However, they didn't have the same, they call it morals, I guess you'd say, or the same level of professionalism that the rest of the team already had that had previously been at the camp for a while. And so this new team that came in kept their own professionalism levels, and they struggled to work as a team and kind of get along. And so eventually this team was kind of kicked out because they didn't work well together, and that's basically where it ended.
So what this chapter is all about is called Check the Ego. And basically the principle is that when someone has a large ego and they don't realize that it's overpowering everything, it can start to disrupt everything they're doing. And it explains how the most difficult ego that you're going to have to deal with is your own, and being able to realize that even though you may think you're higher up, you might not be in a certain situation, and that you need to check your ego and go along with the plan, because everything will end up working out a lot better if you guys can work together. And it's basically just realizing that you can have a degree of humility but still be able to operate with each other. So the application to business they related it to in this chapter was an operations department called Jocko and Leaf, and was explaining how over the past couple months he was trying to build a more effective team, but he said they weren't doing very well because they had a major issue with one of their critical projects. And basically what happened is that one of his superintendents that works under him made a call during one of their large projects, and his call was wrong, and he ended up running it through the main guy, and they lost a lot of money. And he was getting really upset because he always tells the superintendent, you need to run everything by me. I realize that you're really skilled and that you know what you're doing, but you just lost us a ton of money, and I don't think he understood that. So what Jocko and Leaf were trying to explain to him is that even though even though that he may have a lot of experience and so does the other guy, you can't really afford to lose them. So you have to check your ego, as long as you have to explain to the other guy that this wasn't the right call, and you need to understand that you need to kind of take responsibility, but also understand the bigger picture and know that you may have thought this was the right call in this scenario, but if you look at the overall situation, it was not. And
yeah, he at the end he said, this is not his fault at all. It's 100% your fault. And the guy at first was like, no, it's not his fault. He made the call. And he always fights with everyone. And he ended up saying, no, it's your fault 100%. If you don't believe that, then you're not a good leader. Because that guy didn't know that he was supposed to ask him. I'm sure he did, but obviously the boss didn't make that very clear, that you need to run it by me, so that's his fault. And I think that comes into play when, especially as us being students, ultimately our preceptor is responsible for whatever happens. So they need to make sure we're in check, especially our egos, because if we're trying to make a call and we're like, no, it's not broken, it's fine, and they just believe us and they don't try to, if they let us run with our own egos, then they're going to get in trouble, not really us. So I think that's where that mostly applies, is you have to also check your own ego at evaluating someone. Yeah, you can think you're 100% right, and it can go the opposite direction. And so you have to know that and not tell the kid a certain thing that happened. An example. Last Friday, as in I and my preceptor both told this kid that he either broke or dislocated his finger, 100%. Bert was 100%, I was 100%. His mom came down and took him to the ER. The doctor ended up saying he had a grade 1 sprain, that his immune system overreacted and it caused all the swelling and something weird happened. But I think it was hard for both of us to check our ego and say, no, that was definitely a fracture, because that's what it looked like.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to do that sometimes, I think.
Definitely. I think it's very hard, especially like as a student, you want to prove yourself in a way to your preceptor and all those that you're working with. So like you really have to make sure that you do check your ego and not like overstep or do too much or like be too confident. Like it's good to be confident, but there is a point where you're overconfident and it can like really affect your skills as well as like your ability to communicate with others and like get through things together with others. You may become like this one team who thought they were better than everybody else and didn't try to work with anybody or try and like meet their standards in the same way. So it can make some issues as teamwork with your athletic training ability to like cover everything, and it really could hurt other people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think of this one more as, well, my own example for me this semester is, since I'm the only student working with my preceptor and we cover all the sports at Missouri State, I'll end up seeing like 4 athletes in 1 hour. And when they all want soft tissue or they all want me to like go here with them or explain these exercises, I have to check my own ego and realize like, hey, like I'm only a student. Like I sometimes have no idea what I'm doing and I need my preceptor's help, and I need to like sometimes I think that I'm too overconfident, so all the athletes will come to me and be like, oh, like she knows what she's doing, she can help me. And I'm like, yeah, but I already have 3 other athletes I'm trying to help. Like you need to go find Mitch. Like I can't do this by myself. So
Definitely.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's just really important to just make yourself aware and like stay aware.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to Chapter 5. Chapter 5 was titled Cover and Move. So the basis of this story was there were 2 teams. They were doing kind of like a way, they were going out into like this very dangerous like neighborhood in Iraq that was like more than normal. It's one of like the top areas of like danger. And so they had these 2 teams that were going to be snipers that were going to be covering the other teams that are like walking through the area. And so this team, there were 2 different teams. One team went to one building that was much further out, and then there was another team, I think that was like 3 kilometers or something from the like base camp. And so this team 2 who went further out, they had found an area that in the end wasn't very safe, and so they felt that they should have they had 2 options. One was to wait it out and like call for backup in a sense, but they didn't know how long it would last before those that were considered like the bad guys, I guess, got back to them and like started trying to basically kill them. And so this team had that option, and the second option was to pack up and head out and get back to base camp as quickly as possible and do the cover and move. While they had been told, the first team, who was only 3 kilometers out from base camp, that this was their plan, that they were going to pack up and move out. And they had then also told like their base camp that that was the plan. However, they found out that the other team who was heading back to base camp had not informed base camp that they were also leaving. So this team 2 had gotten back, but at the very end, when they got close to base camp, they had were attacked, and so they had some issues of getting back in. And team 1 had made it back fine, and team 2 ended up making it back fine. But then his team 2's head officer had then told him, like, why didn't you leave team 1? They could have covered you as you got back. Like, why did you not tell them to stay there, cover us, and then you come back when you can, because they were in a safer location than team 2 was. So in the end, they realized, wow, we should have really utilized all the teams we had and availability we had. And so in the end, they learned a great lesson of like staying, like the cover and move. That it's not just your team, but you can use other teams to help you as well.
So put simply, the application of this chapter, cover and move, all that really means is teamwork. And what I thought was an interesting quote that they wrote in this chapter was, each member of a team is critical to success. Though the main effort and supporting efforts must be clearly identified, if the overall team fails, then everyone fails, even if a specific member and an element within the team did their job successfully. So all that really means is that you can't work with the team and you can't work together with another group, such as the story that they gave when they were in battle, then you will not be successful. They ended up being successful just because they're highly trained officers. But if they weren't, they might not have been, and they could have easily just used this cover and move method and been even safer going back to battle. So the application that they related it to in the business world is that a production manager was claiming that some of his teammates were just horrible. They weren't doing their job. They were having all these major issues. And he explained how they were trying to minimize the downtime of their team. So let me restart. Okay. So there's this company and they produce this certain product. And in order to produce this product, they have to send it off to like another company where they basically just manufacture it, put it all together and send it off. And their main guy was trying to reduce his team's downtime. But in order to do that, he realized that a lot of the time was being wasted with this other company and how they weren't getting the product out fast enough. They feel like they always had to wait on them and they weren't doing their job correctly. And he basically just said they spend a lot of their time waiting on them, and that's a huge problem for them because that can cause delays, and delays can cause serious like revenue issues. And basically Jocko and Leif just explained to him, okay, well, I realize that you think they're the problem, but how can you help them? Like, you guys need to realize that they're not the enemy. Like, everyone else is the enemy. The other companies that are trying to produce the same project, they're the enemy. So if you can work together with them, maybe start bringing some of their members into your meetings, like asking them what they need from you and what you can do for them, then you might be more productive, in which they were. And once they started to work together, everything started to run a little bit smoother. There weren't as many delays, and they were able to work together as one team and cover and move. So, yeah.
I think this one's easily applied to athletic training with all the different teams we have, like all of our interprofessional experience. That's kind of like cover your butt and, let other people help you. We're not orthopedic surgeons or chiropractors or nutritionists. Like, we're athletic trainers and we have all these people on our team. So why would you not use them? Kind of like in the story when they were in Iraq, why would you not have them cover you? It seems obvious in hindsight, but that's kind of like why would we not use all of our resources to help that patient get better? That one just seems, a little more straightforward to our application.
It's like cover and refer. Like, you're covering your butt and you're just going to refer them to the next line because they specialize in that area. So
yeah, definitely.
Cover and refer.
Always work as a team. That's the best thing you can do. If you were, and it even works like within athletic trainers. Like, if you aren't 100% on your eval or your treatment process, you can ask another athletic trainer that you either work with or that may have a different input or different idea that you can use. So I think it works well with other professions as well as within the same profession to get better ideas.
Yep. Okay. So the last chapter was titled Simple, and that's pretty much the purpose of the whole chapter, is just be simple. So they had an officer come in, and he had a team of the Iraqi soldiers working with him, and he was going to lead these soldiers into this dangerous neighborhood, go through a few different army camps, a Marine camp, and try to just kill all the bad guys he could in this big, long mission, basically. And that's when Jocko was like, slow down. You just got here. This is your first thing. Let's go a little bit out into the neighborhood, maybe not take the whole neighborhood down in one swoop. Let's see how our team works together. Let's come back and just keep going out on missions little by little and learn from each mission. And this guy quickly learned, as he got 12 minutes away from camp, because Jocko timed it. He took his team out 12 minutes away. They already had to call in backup. They had a wounded guy they had to call in to get him out of there. They basically had to go back to camp. So they didn't really even get anywhere, let alone through the whole neighborhood like they were trying to. And basically he got back, and Jocko kind of gave him a look like, yeah, dude, you gotta calm down. And he kind of understood that. And that's basically where he applied it to the business too. This manager had an incentive for his employees to make the products faster, and none of the employees knew why they were getting the bonuses they were getting, but they would get a $200 check one month and a $400 check, and they had no idea where it's coming from, so they didn't know how to improve because they didn't know what good things they were doing that was getting them paid. So he asked the manager that called him in. He said, what's this incentive plan? Can you explain it to me? And the first few times the manager said, no, it's really complex. You wouldn't get it. It's too hard to understand. And he's like, just try to explain it to me. And so he did, and it was very complex. I don't know a lot of the words that he was saying, but he was like, okay, same thing we did back in Iraq. You gotta slow down. Like, if you want people to follow you, you gotta make it simple. Say, hey, if you do this well, you get a bonus. Basically like that. And so the manager broke it down into 2 steps. Do these 2 things, you get a bonus. He explained that to the employees, and then what do you know? Production started getting better. All of the employees started getting better because they knew what they were working for. So kind of make the mission simple, and then it's going to be executed easier.
Yeah. I think this, as well as the other 2 chapters, can easily apply to our major in our field of professionalism and all that jazz, just because when you're working with athletes, you have to realize, like, they're not part of, like, they're obviously part of our world, but they're not part of our medical professional. Like, they don't understand all these super random, like, sternoclavicle mastoid, all that jazz kind of deals. And they don't understand all these terms, so you have to break it down into layman's terms for them, and then they'll understand. Because if you're just throwing out all these words, they have no idea what they're supposed to do, what's wrong, they're confused, they're upset. So that, and then also with their rehab plans, you can't throw in a bunch of random steps and make them do all these super fancy different movements when they can barely even, like, bend over. So
yeah, definitely. It's very important in all aspects. Like, even just with, like, the therapy part of it is, like, you don't want to make them do, like, 1,000 things. You want to keep it down to maybe 5 exercises. You don't want to do, like, going through all of the neurodevelopmental sequence in one treatment session. You want to go through maybe 1 or 2. You may even only get through 1. It depends on the patient. You want to make sure that you keep your eye on, like, what your goal is, definitely. But you don't want to make sure you meet that goal in that treatment. You want to give them time. You don't want to rush everything. You want to keep it simple. Keep it simple, one, so that the athlete or your patient can understand what you're talking about. But you also want to, like, keep going and progress them, but just simply.
Yeah. I think it's weird how easily we're starting to be able to apply this right now. Like, every chapter, I'm like, oh, that's easily applied to not even athletic training, any, like, life.
Definitely.
I think that's kind of their point. Like, yeah, we're Navy SEALs and this is legit stuff, but this can be applied anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying it.
Cool. Okay.
I like it.
Thanks for watching our video.
Bye.
Bye.